Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel on YouTube, where Kahuna and I've got the TNT takes for you on Survivor 44, episode 10. I think we're going to be going full tilt boogie on this power ranking here, Kahuna, as we are breaking it down 2 weeks prior to the finale. Kahuna, what's your level of excitement heading into the end game here? Because you've still got 4 people left in the draft. How did you? We should be calling you the Oracle in the future. Like you had the foresight to see who were going to be the power players this season.
I don't know if it was foresight or dumb luck. Just it seems like some of the players that have gone far are a little bit of the misfits that we didn't necessarily pick. Like I know Carson, I had as my first pick, and Jam Jam was your first pick. Then Carolyn, I thought was going to be a wacky one, but Heidi was down the list. Danny was down the list. Jamie Lynn, like the people who have gone far weren't necessarily the ones that we picked from the get go, and it really affects like how you think it will play out. I've stumbled into having 4 left, which I'm really happy about. I'm not going to complain, but I don't think it's because of any particular foresight into how these very, very different and unique characters will perform in a show like Survivor. So it's been good. We're getting to the pointy end of the season, though.
Let's get the draft up here for those that are not aware of how it's looking. This is not the power rankings. This is the draft that we've been doing. We've been dodging Kahuna for a long time, Jake and I, because we're not doing too great at the moment. You know, I'm down to my last person in the team. Yam Yam is, he's team Chris all the way to the end. And then Kahuna still with a couple of really big characters, big players in Carson, Carolyn, Danny and Heidi, and then Jake has got Lauren and Jamie heading into the end game here. So Jake's not feeling too high on their chances to win. And then Kahuna is also leading, I believe, the draft by almost about 70 or 80 points at this point. And that does make sense, Kahuna, because you've got the players there to do it at the moment, and it's really tough. Let's say hello to the people here in the live. Chris, welcome back to the live. Always great to have you here. Gabe, welcome back. It's like how Chris destroyed Mucky in Australian Survivor. Yeah, Kahuna's he's out for revenge. He wasn't gonna let me win 2 in a row, that's for sure. Georgette saying hello. Hi, Georgette. Welcome back to the live as well. So this is the very first time. We've obviously done many lives before, but we've never done a power ranking live as far as I'm aware. I can't remember us doing a power ranking live. I feel like most of the time it's pre-recorded. So it's going to be great to have people's opinions here in the live as we're talking about these players that are left, because I'm going to be honest, there's a few people, Kuna, that I'm stumped on. I've just got no idea, and I almost feel like they're either, it's either, what's the right saying for it? It's either they win or they lose at this stage. There's no in between.
Yeah, all or nothing. All or nothing.
Yeah. All or nothing at this stage, basically.
It does seem a bit like that. Like, especially when you get down to 7 players and we've got 3 different tiers. It's like there's not that many people and not that many places to hide. I think this was the first week we actually missed on who was going home based on the power rankings
first week,
we did last week. Yeah. So that's a shame. We kept the streak alive for a while there. But like I said, when there's not that many people left, it's harder to sort of figure out where they're going to sit, because anything can happen at this stage. But
that's our power rankings there. So we had Franny in the Spy Shack, which, to be honest with you, I don't feel bad about the fact that we didn't pick her on the edge, because in my mind, she had a legitimate shot still to win the game. If she did not get voted out, if she won a couple of immunities, she could have still snuck her way into that top tier. So I'm okay with losing Franny in the way that we did, because to me, she was better than being on the edge as a player.
Yeah, she was. And maybe that was the problem. Like when you said winning, she had the chance to win a couple of immunities. She won too many. It seems like she really shone. Like Franny's whole thing, I think, came down to her threat management. She had a great season. I thought, being the focus of the showmance at the start, but then really starting to win out. Carson even said in this episode, like, she's won 3 out of 5. I didn't even have her on my radar, but now knowing what she can do, I mean, that's a big thing. And then she also had Jam Jam saying, I think Carolyn's going to have her as a number 1 soon, and really sort of getting in that relationship and not really managing her threat level at all. People were scared.
Yeah, listen, Franny can hold her head high. Losing Matt in the game was the best thing for her story arc, I personally believe. I feel like Matt, his whole story of being on Survivor is tied to Franny, and I really, and I could be wrong, I've been wrong many a times in the past, but I just don't see the storyline for Matt to come back unless it's like an amazing race with Franny, or, there's something around the couple thing, because he doesn't have his own unique um, sort of storyline that he can stand on. Where Franny had the storyline when Matt was out of the game, she survived a couple of rounds after him. She became an absolute beast in the immunity challenges. I wouldn't even, and I know Chris is also a big fan of the challenge. I wouldn't mind to see Franny go over and play on the challenge, because I feel like she could be an interesting character on the challenge, like Kahuna, because she's good at the individual stuff. She clearly has some brains about her, and I don't think we've got her archetype on the challenge, Kahuna.
Well, there's probably reasons for that. Her archetype on the challenge doesn't usually exist, and it would be good to see a difference there. Someone who is clearly physically capable, but also not fitting that archetype that we're so used to on the challenge. I think she's. It's interesting that Franny, like, you don't often see someone win their way into losing. So the fact that she won the challenge that got Matt kicked out really hurt her alliance, and then she's won a couple of immunity challenge, and then won the reward challenge, which was not going to give her any benefit whatsoever as far as getting further in the game, but just painted that target even. I've never seen someone win their way so badly. You know what I mean? Like, as far as being able to pick and choose, not that you can, of when you can win and when you can't, or if you were given that option, I think if given the choice, she would maybe choose differently in some of the wins. And when she's not in danger, she wins, and then when she's in danger, she misses. So yeah,
it's survivor timing for you, with those immunity wins. But Gabe here says Franny was a fun character and surprisingly good at challenges. I agree with you, Gabe. He also says it's good that Matt left before Franny, or she probably would have been targeted first in the show mounts. I do think that is a very high likelihood. And then Christian says, hi guys. Hey Christian, welcome back to the live. He says, I think Danny will win the last gasp challenge this week. And obviously there's been a lot of focus on breathing with Danny, his breathing exercises out there on the island. I would not be surprised at all. It feels like this is an immunity that has been built for him. And let's talk about Danny first. And we've got to remove Franny here from. It pains me to do this. We're going to remove her from the list. She's no longer in the game and eliminated. We're going to start off with the person we had ranked at the lowest of our power rankings coming into this week, and that's Danny. Now, for me, I'll start this one off, Kahuna, and you can add your 2 cents as well. For me, Danny has not done anything this week to increase his chances of winning the game. Him going after Franny, after he saved Franny a couple of rounds ago with an individual immunity idol, was very puzzling for me to understand, because that's such a powerful tool in the game. It's something that could have given him safety later in the game if he was going to play a selfish game for himself. Maybe it is the fact that he knew he didn't have the numbers and that she was going to go regardless. And he was banking on that relationship that he started to build with Carson in the game. But he handled a lot of things badly. His conversation with Heidi saying he doesn't need her number when she's clearly his right-hand person didn't seem to go down too well with Heidi. I feel like he's running out of numbers, and he's now taken out his shield in front of him in Franny, because he's been second in quite a lot of these individual immunity challenges, Kahuna. So I don't feel very confident about him. Now, obviously, we know Last Gasp is the immunity that's coming up, but I don't know if we take that into consideration when we do our power rankings, or if we just leave him right down there at the bottom. How do you feel about it, Kone? He's definitely on the edge for me. I can be persuaded in regards to where he is on the edge, though.
Yeah. Look, I don't think you're right. He didn't do anything this week to get him out of the edge for us. And for my rankings, I think, like seeing him turn on Franny after using an idol is so weird. Like it seems like such a 180. The only thing in my mind this week that puts him a little bit up, and I don't even think it's enough to really move him in places, but is the fact that even though Franny is gone from being a shield, she's also his biggest block from winning these challenges. Yeah, his biggest. So the only thing is that he now steps up a level as far as being able to take out these wins. Is that enough? Because, with immunity challenges and the way Survivor is, they don't always just go to the most physically capable, especially we saw this week with Carson and puzzles. If there's going to be puzzles going forward, then Danny might not be in the prime position. But the only thing that I can think of that if you squint really hard and try to give him positives, it would be that Franny's now no longer going to be that obstacle in his way. But I'm happy to
I feel
keep him down at the
comfortable.
bottom.
Yeah, I'm comfortable to move him ahead of potentially the two girls, but we'll talk about them as well, and we'll reconsider that because the next person up is going to be Jamie. And let's read a few of the comments first here about Danny before we go into that. I mean, that is the luxury of doing this live. People can actually influence our decisions. Gabe saying Danny is entertaining. His plans happen, but happen at the detriment of his game, and it benefits Tika more. So he's basically like an extra undercover Tika player at the moment. Georgetta saying the three girls could team up with Danny and take out Tika, and one of them could win. I do think Tika potentially is in trouble this week, but that is looking ahead of where the power rankings may go later on. But I do think that is not out of the realm of possibility there, Georgette. I think you're onto something. Caswash, welcome back. We always love having you here in the live. We're just doing our live power rankings for Survivor 44 for the very first time. Normally we pre-record this, so we're going to have a bit of a chat as we do this. Gabe is saying it's like Danny hanging himself with his plans. Yep. So, okay, I'm happy with Danny for now. We'll put him at the top of On the Edge, which means he's still in a lot of trouble. He really needs to win out now until the end in the game. Let's talk about Jamie. And Kahuna, you can start us off on this one.
James, it is not looking good for Jane. She just continues to get the complete dodo edit. I don't know if the editors and the production love or hate her, but they're not making her look good. And the way they do that, I think it's brilliant. Every time I see it on TV, in reality TV, the contrasting editing as far as the confession versus what the other people are thinking, all that. And she had her big moment this week because she got to come clean and say, hey, yeah, that idol that I had, it's still wedged up Kane's ass as he left Tribal, like I no longer have it. And they're like, oh, yeah. Wow, that's out there. And then immediately, like, they go, that sounds like bullshit. There's no way I'm believing that. And the way they just chop and change from her going, I'm telling the truth. I feel free. I feel good now. I think everything's okay. And then immediately they're like, nah, we're not buying it for a second. But what I found really interesting as well is that they did give Carson and Franny both moments where they're saying, wow, maybe Jamie's really good at this and better than we gave her credit for.
Yeah.
And then again at the end, just completely like not giving her any credence whatsoever, any respect in the edit, just showing her thinking that she's got it over, that she's being honest, and everyone else disbelieving her completely, including the edit. So it's not looking good for Jamie, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the closest person to Jamie, and it's maybe not a fair comparison, and maybe it's recency bias, is Simon Me from Australian Survivor. Had a very similar edit where he was seen as a bit of the dodo music playing and being a couple of steps behind the strategy at all time. The only difference is Jamie has not been shown to be great at individual immunities as of yet, which is something Simon was really good at. And I do like Jamie. She's a fun character. She's like a less effective Angelina. It's kind of how I see her on the show, but I do like Jamie. I've got a soft spot for her. A few people have recently said that they think Jamie can potentially be a big character still this season. And Christian kind of comments on it here. He says, I don't see Jamie being eliminated this week, and her edit's somewhat relevant, and I believe she's in the finals, but doesn't win the game. Gabe says, Jamie ball of sunshine, but no self-awareness. Her best shot is last one standing against Tika and becomes enduring underdog like Simon. Exactly. That's kind of how I see it. A few people have said they think she makes it to the end, and I don't see it yet, but I mean, listen, stranger things have happened in the new era of Survivor. She's definitely still, for me, somewhere on the edge. Maybe the fact that a Soka member has now been taken out, so it's 2 Soka, 2 Ratu left in the game. That gives her a little bit of an opportunity to go against Tika in this next vote. They would be foolish not to go after the Tika 3 for the next vote because they're down in numbers. And it does look like Jamie and Lauren kind of mended bridges with both Heidi and Danny, and that there is some sort of conversation strategically happening between the four of them. So, I mean, it only takes four of them to turn the tables on the TK3. So, again, like I said, coming into this one, there's a lot of people I'm very uncertain about. I do think that Jamie, for me, still is somewhere on the edge. But I can listen. It's tomato right now. Where on the edge would you put her? Because I am indecisive right now when I'm looking at the bottom three.
Yeah, like it's really just grasping at straws, because to me she has no chance of winning the game, so she should automatically be on the bottom all the time for me. But the only thing that kind of maybe is what people are saying is that she may get to the end because she's such a non-threat. She's so inept at the game but I think that people might be taking Carolyn for that role. I think
I
people
think so as
look
well.
at
Yeah,
they
not
don't
that she is, but they're reading it wrong.
exactly. So if the old Survivor play of I want to sit next to a goat and take someone with me who I will beat in the finals, Jamie Lynn could feel that definitely. But I think people like Carson and Jam Jam and whoever have already slated Carolyn for that role mistakenly, thinking that she's not. Like, we've seen the edit show us that people aren't respecting her game. I think Jamie is that as well, but they're not hiding it as much or like bringing her in as much as a Carolyn. So to me, she's on the outs. She's not even on the inside, and she can't be that person for them when they've already got one or they think they've got one. So yeah, I'd have her at the bottom as well. But like I said, the only thing protecting her is that she's so crap at it that people might not want to take her out. She's not a threat for challenges. She's not a threat for, anything really at this point. She doesn't have the numbers. So you can kind of keep her around while you've got a Jamie ahead of her. Not a Jamie, a Danny ahead of her and things like that. So
well, the funny thing is that no one knows that she had a fake idol, not even her. No one knows that. So she could still go to the end and say, I found an idol and get credit for it in a final tribal council because no one there knows that it was fake. So that would be funny if she wins based on a fake idol. And she also played the first shot in the dark correctly in the history of the show.
Correctly.
So she's got some, correctly. But I mean, she's got some bragging, right? She's done some stuff, in the game. But I am worried for if she does end up getting to the end. I don't think we move her from where she is. Let's talk a little bit about Lauren in the game. Lauren, to me, is a slightly more capable Jamie. She hasn't had as many advantages in the game. She only had that banker vote that she was given very early on in the season by risking her vote. And why I like Lauren is she seems to be socially someone that can adapt, and she seems to be in with the likes of a Heidi and also a Danny. She's having conversations. She seems to be getting along pretty well with Carolyn. Let's not forget about the potential of the Moms Alliance between Lauren, Heidi, and Carolyn. I think there is more options for Lauren in the game right now socially, to the point where I would argue, for me personally, she might be on the top of edge. Like I would, because with Danny, he has to win. He has to win. That is a fact. Where I think Lauren doesn't need to win, but if Danny does win, Lauren could be in trouble still because of the fact that she's good socially.
Yeah, you're right. Like she and because of what she's done so far, even though she's won an immunity, I don't think she carries the same threat level as a Danny, so she wouldn't be targeted before him. But she is more capable than a Jamie. So you're right. I think she's still at the bottom just because of numbers, but she seems to be in maybe a slightly better position than her fellow on the edge people.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move her up. Let's not split too much hairs on that. The next person that we need to talk about is someone that you've been a very big, sort of supporter of on this channel, and you've always said that I've been too low on this person, Heidi. So let's start. You could start off on Heidi here. You can let us know, what are you thinking about Heidi? Is she continuing to climb the ranks, or is she still in Spy Shack? Do you think she could potentially slip into Soul Survivor? Are you impressed by the game she's playing? The fact that she's got an idol that no one knows about, the fact that she's got the Mothers Alliance going on, and there's a few things for her potentially on the up, even the willingness maybe to cut Danny, which shows people that she could be a number.
Yeah, she had a good couple of weeks, which I think brought her into the spotlight and rightfully put her where she has been for us. I think she's in that middle. She's nearly at the top, but not quite. But this week I didn't necessarily see enough to push her any higher. And I wasn't really happy with the way she came across in that, like you said, with the thing with Danny. She's not. She said we're not like final two together, but she's shown a few times now that she's actually not that committed to anything really. She's got
Mm.
no real strong ties. If Danny is supposed to be her number one, and she's saying no, he's not, then she doesn't have anyone else besides him so far either. Because the Tika three are solid. It looks like Jamie and Lauren are just because of the fact that they were so Ratu together. So she doesn't have any ties in the game that are going to get her through, and she automatically falls to the bottom of whatever alliance happens. Right. So I'm not sure. Like, I didn't see enough, and she's always a little bit flighty, and it was even brought up that she panics when she hears news, or Danny said this to her, and she's a couple times now gone and spilled the beans to other people. I don't know if that's wanting to build the relationship or that she can't hold on to that information. She seems to play a pretty honest game despite being in a lot of different things. Idle is a huge thing when you have 7 left. Like, there's only 2 more times that she can really use it. So that puts her past the next one for sure. Like, automatically, if she doesn't, if she thinks there's any chance she uses it, she gets past another one. She should be safe, but I haven't seen anything from the last episode that says she's moving up to that top tier.
Interesting. Yeah, listen, me and you've kind of flipped a little bit on Heidi. I actually do feel, but I think it's because I started so low on Heidi and you started so high on her. We're kind of meeting each other now in the middle after a couple of weeks, where I feel like Heidi has consistently been shown to strategize. We're seeing her talk to different people. Like, sharing of information has always been a thing in Survivor. And I think that seeing someone's gameplay and seeing them trying to make these inroads with Lauren and Carolyn is a positive thing for her game. She needs numbers. The Soka tribe are no longer there, especially with Franny out of the game. I don't think tying herself to Danny is a good decision. This is the new age of Survivor, where people have said, even in Tribal Council, that alliances don't exist anymore in Survivor. That's a thing of the past. That's pre-season 40. That's when alliances was a good thing. Now it's all about the individual. Do I like that? No, I don't potentially like that. I love seeing the classic alliances, the Black Widow Brigade, the Dom and Wendell go to the end, Stephen Fishback and JT go into the end, seeing I forgot the name of them, but the Yule Alliance with Becky and Ozzy and those guys, like, and bringing Jonathan Penner over. Like, I love seeing these alliances, minnow alliances, which, by the way, I'm being a little bit, on the nose here, because Tika is an alliance in itself and have been an alliance in itself this season. So I don't think it's necessary that it doesn't exist anymore. It's just that a lot of people feel less inclined to stick with an alliance until the end. Heidi, to me, I don't know. There's something about her that tells me she still has some legs in the game. The editors are clearly showing us her game, which is more than what we're seeing from Lauren, which is more than we're seeing from other players in the game. In fact, thinking about it, Lauren's probably the person we've seen the least a bit of gameplay from. And Gabe is right when he says Lauren has no shot. I believe we don't know her gameplay, where a lot of other people, we kind of know where they're sitting. Jamie a little bit as well. Like, I give her the fun edit, the commie wacky stuff, but do we really know strategically where she wants to move in the game? No. Heidi, at least we know. There's a clear direction. So I'm not advocating for her to be on the Soul Survivor top bracket here, but I think she does deserve her spot in Spice Shack very comfortably at this stage. Let's have a look at what Gabe says here. Gabe says Heidi has to pull a Marianne, get out a big target towards the end. She might take out someone at fire at 4, because why did they yeah, exactly. It always, these things that they do always stick out, man. Like, they show it for a reason. They showed Heidi making fire for a reason in the beginning of the season. But I'm a Heidi stan. You hear it here first. I've been enjoying her this season. I actually do like Heidi. I don't know, there's some familiarity about her. I've said this a few times, because where I grew up in South Africa, there's a lot of strong women, like role models I had growing up, and she kind of reminds me a little bit of home. There's a little bit of familiarity there. I feel like she's a very strong woman, which, I love seeing them do well on the show. Sadly, the moms don't always do well in Survivor, so hopefully her or Carolyn can break that curse this season, Kahuna.
Yeah, we saw Lauren also get her, which made me think for a second maybe she's the one going home next week, because she had that flowers moment with her.
You're right.
Yeah, so she had that. Heidi hasn't really had that much yet. Jam Jam did have a thing this episode as well, which we'll talk about. But yeah, Lauren got the I'm a single mom, overcoming,
Dad's proud of her.
divorce. Dad's proud of her. So she really got her moment there. And I'm wondering if maybe that doesn't look good for next week, potentially. So we'll see.
Yeah, okay. So we're in agreement. We leave Heidi and Spy Shack. We need to talk about the next person here. And Christian has kind of said something that I'm worried about as well. He said, I think Lauren Carson could be in danger this week. Carson, for me, started off at the top of the power rankings. He got sick, became a little bit less visible in the edit at times. All of that can be explained, right, Kahuna, because he was feeling unwell. Maybe he did less confessionals during those days. He's starting to get more of an edit again. He's back in the fold, and he's wanting to play this mastermind, evil genius game. And constantly we see him looking at the fire. Fire seems to be a symbol around his game. Now, does that mean he goes to fire? Does that mean his game goes up in flames? Because he's trying to play too many different hands and he just gets burned along the way. I don't know, but I do feel confident about one thing right now, Kuna. Carson is no longer in the Soul Survivor category after this week, and I would personally put him into Spy Shack. I wouldn't drop him all the way to on the edge because I do still think he can win the game. But the problem that I have here is that Carson has broken the trust with Carolyn this week, which I don't think Carolyn is going to forgive him for this very easily. I know she's forgiven Yam Yam before, but Yam Yam, I think she expected some sporadic, crazy gameplay from, because Yam Yam is that kind of person, where I think Carson was the person she looked at him as her anchor in the game, as the stable force that she can rely on. And that being pulled away from someone in the game so late, I think Carolyn will go against the Tika 3 in this next episode. And I do think Carson is on the radar out of those. I think that the Yam Yam Carolyn relationship, it's just such an interesting relationship where they're drawn to each other, and Carson could be cannon fodder in this next round.
Wow. Well, I now that you put it that way, I see it as well, but I didn't get. I actually thought it was a pretty decent episode from Carson as far as what they've shown us. He got to have that moment at the start.
His reasoning was solid, by the way. His reasoning was solid to vote her out because he knew that Carolyn was getting another number one in Franny, and he wanted to be the number one. So that's solid. The way he did it and betraying her until the end, not going back even just before Tribal Council to say, I'm sorry, it's not going your way. I couldn't change the votes. We're going to have to vote her out. That's a problem. That's a problem because he betrayed her.
Especially because Carolyn did put the effort in as well. She tried really hard to get it off Franny.
Very hard.
And so the fact that, she went to all the lengths and then, you could see, I was just he got that moment at the start where, Franny was saying, everyone was saying, oh, it's chaos on the beach. No one knew what happened. And then Carson was like, I knew. Right. And then he also got the immunity win where he, again, his 3D printed puzzles is kind of a cheat code, I think. He got that pretty easily. So I was like, oh, pretty good episode from Carson. But it's when you have the preview of what's to come, you go, oh, it doesn't look quite as good as what's coming up next. But to me, he's still, if he's not in with the top two with Carolyn and he's right there with them. I don't think they're cutting him before they get rid of some of the others that seem to be a lot more flexible. To Carolyn and Jam Jam's plans, you know what I mean? He's part of that Three Stooges, and as much as they may bicker, I don't think they're going to cut him off before the danger of other people are gone first.
And listen, at the moment we're very much splitting hairs because we've only got a select few people left in the game. We've got 7 people left in the game. We've got 3 categories we've got to fill. But when you look at these power rankings, as it stands currently, Carson is still in number 3 to potentially win this game. So he's not out of the top 3. I'm not saying Carson's got no shot in hell, but this is the top 4 as I see it currently, based on the edit, based on what we've seen. I am hoping for Carson things. I feel so conflicted this season, but this is what makes the season good, Kona, going into the end, because I actually love all of the top 4. I love Heidi, Carson, Yam Yam, and Carolyn. And I would actually be happy with any of them winning. Carolyn has stolen my heart a little bit this season, where I'm probably pushing her way more than anyone else to win this season, because I think it would be such a memorable season if she did pull it off. But I would be happy with any of these 4 winning at the end. And I want to say, Carson definitely did do the right read. What's interesting to me is, well, I've said it a few times, we're talking about Yam Yam next. Yam Yam has been given a very favorable edit this season for someone that's not going to win the show. Like my radar is very much still on him at this point, as him getting a lot of great confessionals, but he clearly is Carson's number 2. Like whenever he goes to talk about strategy and things like that, he's bouncing off Carson, and Carson's the one that sort of is coming across as more of the lead person in the strategy talk about, no, this is why we need to stay strong to vote out Franny, because Franny is getting close to Carolyn. Like he's the one with that great insightful tips that he's giving. Now everybody needs a great number 2, but it makes me fearful that Carson probably doesn't make the final 3 at this point, or he's just horrible at explaining his game at the end if a Yam Yam or a Carolyn is supposed to win this game. So I agree with Georgette when she says Heidi and Carson most likely makes fire from the clues we've been given on the show. Christian Gale saying it showed in the preview for next episode. I'm not too sure what he's referring to. Gabe says Carson's in trouble. He upset Carolyn. She might keep him as an ally, but cut Carson sooner than expected. Yep, I can see that. Carson now in Omar spot like 42. Yes, Carson kind of is like the Omar, Jesse, kind of to a certain degree, less dominant than Jesse overall, but and I know you don't know who those people are because you didn't watch those seasons, but yeah, we've seen a few similarities in recent seasons on the show. Cash Wash says, I'm a big fan. I'm a big Carolyn stan. Aren't we all, Cash Wash? I feel like we're all this is Carolyn's world this season, Survivor 44. We're just living in it.
Everything she does is like magnetic. Like even when she's like sucking at a challenge, the way she screams because it's so hard for her, or like you just like everything she does, where even when she's not doing that well, it's just pure like TV magic. Like every time she's on screen, you're like, I'm entertained right now. She's not doing good, she's doing good, whatever it is in between. As long as it's Carolyn, it's great.
Yeah. Lexa Powell, welcome to the live stream. I don't believe I've seen you here before. Always great to see new faces. Saying Yam Yam also had the fire reflected in his glasses last episode, and he spoke extensively about being able to mic fire in the premiere. I think Carson will lose fire to Yam based on the foreshadowing. I think Heidi foreshadowing is to throw us off. That's an interesting observation. I have never realized that about Yam Yam. Did you pick up on that with Yam Yam also having... because I feel like Yam Yam doesn't have glasses, right? Are you meaning Carson? Probably. Carson's got the glasses. I've seen the fire
this episode, he was a secret glasses guy. Yeah, I was surprised because normally it's Carson and Heidi, but Jam Jam had the glasses for the challenge, for the puzzle. And I think it was to see what was going on. But Jam Jam did have... I was like, oh, Jam Jam's got glasses this week. Interesting.
Yeah, I had someone, who was it? I can't remember, so apologies to the person who messaged me about this, but someone said they believe that this season may be the first season where someone is going to give up their immunity at the final 4 to make fire against the biggest threat and then lose. Can you imagine that happening? Like, that would be insane. I was like, this is such a such a left field thing to predict that I was so shocked by it. I was like, wow, imagine Carson is like, I need to take Yam Yam out. He's my biggest competition because he's such a social beast. And then he gives up his immunity, goes against Yam Yam and loses, and Yam Yam wins the immunity. But it also, one thing that will be definitely in Yam Yam's favor is that if he does go up against Carson in the end, and he takes out probably the best strategic player, I would say, this season, because Carolyn's not being, like, her game's not forefront. It's not front and center where people won't know that until she maybe, I hope she can articulate it. That's my worry for Carolyn at the end. But, if he takes out Carson in front of everybody, that's a definite win for Yam Yam. That's like Chris Underwood coming in and taking Rick Devens out.
Is that how that works, though, with, like... Because when you go, if I took out one of the biggest strategic players, but I did it by making fire, I didn't actually get him out with a vote or strategize a way to rally other people. I just took him out with fire when that's not his strength. You know what I mean? Like, does it get the same cachet that you can stand? I took out this person. Well, you took him out by going to fire where, like, he's not good at fire. You're good at fire, whatever it is. Like, I don't know if it holds the same, like, getting George out via vote on King George. Yeah.
Should it? I don't know, but it definitely, that's one of the criticisms that people have of the fire making challenge, is the fact that someone can take someone out, and then, like, I mean, it's the whole Gabler effect last season, right? You didn't watch that. That again, you need to go back and watch, where there was a lot of people who were big fans of Cassidy going into the final three last season, and she was like a fan favorite. I personally didn't see it. I don't dislike Cassidy. I didn't think she played as big of a game as some other people did. And like, again, if you did love Cassidy, that's okay. Like, we all can have our different opinions, and that's the beauty of Survivor. I always say this: we all have our favorites. We all have people we support. I did like Gabler's game last season. I could see why he won, but a lot of people believe the fact that Gabler took out the biggest threat last season in Fire is the reason he won. I don't think it's the only reason he won, but I do think that it holds weight at the end. And I do think that, they were being unnecessarily critical of Cassidy in the final tribal council by saying, why didn't you give up your immunity and make Fire against Jesse if you wanted to win? Because he was the favorite. Like, I don't think you should be expected to do that. And I think that was unfair to Cassidy. You see, so definitely the Fire has more weight than what it should have in the game. And I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of that. Let's read a couple more comments here. Chris, I can totally see that happening. Carson is the type who would want to pull the Chris Underwood. Very underrated final tribal, in my opinion, by the way. Yep. Let's have a look here. We've also seen Yam Yam fire at Tika, and no Yam Yam also wear glasses. Yep. I do remember her making fire at Tika. Christian Gal says the reverse Chris Underwood formula. Yeah, it would be if someone was to lose. That's the edge of extinction strategy of your fellow Chris. Yep. So funny enough, both Chris Underwood and Cassidy, we will see back on our screens this upcoming season for the Challenge USA. They're both in there. So even more of a reason for you to go watch the last couple of seasons now, Kahuna, of Survivor, because we've got two people, I think, from recent seasons. Yeah, we've got Cassidy from last season, and then Chanel from 42 on there as well. Lexa saying, this is why we need more camp life scenes. We haven't seen who the fire maker is at Vava. We did see Yam Yam and Heidi both make fire pre-merge, so maybe there will be some kind of twist with the three fire makers. Could be. I mean, Jeff he's been a little bit of an interesting person to read this season. Like, he keeps throwing new stuff in there, and I'm surprised that so far, Kahuna, I know we're off topic with the power rankings, but I mean, we might as well talk about it. I've been surprised that he's let people play for the last 3 episodes. Like, it's almost been like normal Survivor, which is, it's like weird. And I spoke about this, Kahuna, on my live with Jake, and I'd love to know your opinion about it, and anybody in the live that want to comment on it as well. Don't we have it like the wrong way around right now in Survivor? I know, like, sometimes we're critical, and I don't want to be critical for the sake of being critical, but in the beginning of the season, we had all these twists, all these formula changes. Now, this week, going to the island to decision-making island means this. Next week, it means that. And we've got, 6 or 7 advantages in the game and fake idols in the game. So we get all these different mechanics in the beginning of the season. We don't get to know the players or feel any kind of attachment to them. And now that we're getting into the merge, now they're backtracking and saying, oh, you should care about Lauren. You should care about all these people by giving us more story. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't we start it slower, get to know the cast first, and then speed it up to the end? Don't we have it the wrong way around right now, Kuna?
Well, they've shown 3 weeks in a row now without massive production interference and twists and all that sort of thing. And it's been 3 really good episodes. Like, at the start of the season, I know I was hearing on social media that people were down on the season. People weren't liking the way that it was just too chaotic, too crazy. And then when they actually pair it back, whether intentional as far as timing goes, but it's worked. The last few weeks has been some really good Survivor being played out on our screens, and I've really enjoyed it, much more so than at the start of the season when you're trying to keep your tally in your head of who's got what and what's going on and who's goes where. And like, I'm like you said, 42 and 43 I missed, so I've not been as entrenched in modern Survivor after 40. Like, I watched 41, but it kind of falls into the memory banks a little bit because without that recency bias. And yeah, like, if that's what the modern incarnation is, it's not as good. And then the last couple of weeks we've been seeing without the interference, and it's been great. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's a timing thing, do it more later, because we've also seen that when it gets towards the end, when there's twists and things like that, we go, oh, now it's production affecting the outcome of the game, because like this person got twist screwed, and when they could have gone through. And when it's getting to the real tight end of the game, you don't want to see that interaction either. So I don't know. Like, I'm not sure where the balance lies, but it seems like they're going from one extreme to the other for sure.
Yeah, and I know I don't want to make this bag on Jeff Probst's episode here, but why are we not like surveying the audience and getting a little bit of feedback? I know that it must be hard to be Jeff and have millions and millions of fans around the world, not just the USA, messaging you with a bunch of ideas and how you can improve the show. Like, it must be hard. You have to cut out a lot of that noise. But like I've said before, get a small circle of people that are fans and previous players of the show and trust in them to give you some great feedback. Survivor South Africa does it extremely well by having one of the people that I respect and a person that I look up to a lot in the international Survivor circles, Shannon Gus, who's been podcasting about it for Rob as a podcast for a very, very long time. She's a clear fan of the show. We have our own differences. I've had her on the podcast before when we did a fantasy team lineup for an international crossover season, and we had differences of opinions about some players, but I respect her knowledge. I respect her insights into the game, and clearly Survivor South Africa does, because they have her as a part of the panel in production to help bounce ideas off. So she can give criticism to say, this is a step too far, maybe we should pull it back here, or yes, go ahead and that. And I do think someone like that, it doesn't need to be Shannon, but it could be like an Adam Klein in the US or something. I feel like Survivor needs that person to keep Jeff in check, basically, when it comes to that. Let's read a few more comments here before we get into the last two people that we want to power rank here for this week. Gabe says the Gabler effect, if the jury doesn't think any of the final three had a good game, and later on to whatever to vote someone. Yeah, I do agree. I know I'm probably pissing a lot of people off. That's like, Chris, why are you saying this? I didn't see Cassidy's game. I kind of, like, she was social, she was talking to people, but she didn't run the game. There was nothing she could point out to say, this is where I made the change. I don't think. And maybe I'm being too critical. I'll watch the season again. I don't want to be too critical, because I also want her to do, and I'll be shouting, I'm Team Survivor. I'll be shouting for Cassidy in USA, So Cash Wash is saying, Gabe, yeah, they definitely wanted Jesse to make it through. Jesse definitely played the best game that season. That's undisputed. Gabe says that rumor of next season being longer now because of the writer strike might help. I agree. I think it will definitely help having longer episodes. Lexa says, I think showing the backstory at the end only works if there are huge screen time hogs like Xander's backstory being shown in the finale. The under-edited players need their backstory up front. I agree. I still prefer to see most people's backstories towards the beginning of the season, and just, because I feel like if I don't see a backstory early on, I almost don't feel like they're relevant to the season. Like, I'm like, they're clearly not winning. Even though Erica's backstory,
Yeah.
I feel like Erica's backstory was on the episode she broke the hourglass. That was hers, and that was like mid-season. Gabe said, might get more camp life scenes. Yep, I agree. Marcus Thompson, welcome back into live, says, Jeff Probst lost me as soon as he said that he makes Survivor for kids these days. Explain why he doesn't cast true villains anymore and why the game becomes a scavenger hunt. It is so disappointing, Marcus. It is so disappointing. I spoke about it before on the podcast. I was like 10 when I started watching, 10 or 11 when I started watching Survivor. I was a kid. It was a lot more grown up back then than what it is now. I loved it. The whole nuance in the game is watching Richard Hatch win as a 10 or 11-year-old, being so upset at the TV screen because why did the bad guy win? The good guy should always win. And then going back as an adult to watch that season again and to appreciate the villainy and the strategic mastermind of Richard Hatch at a later time. That's what's so beautiful about Survivor, because as a kid, you see something different. You see Ozzy and you're like, Ozzy is my favorite. Then you grow up and you realize Ozzy wasn't a great Survivor player. He was just good at the physical stuff. Like that's part of Survivor. So you don't need to change it. Like, it hooked me as a kid already, Jeff. You don't need to change it. But anyways.
If that's the goal, like, I hear what you're saying, but as a father of 3, and my oldest is 7, she's about to turn 8. If Jeff Probst said that he's trying to make Survivor for the kids these days, he's got no shot whatsoever. I know what you're saying. Like, when you were a kid, Survivor was, like, that's because we lived in a time, and I'm a little bit older than you, but my favorite shows as a kid were whatever adult TV shows are on TV, because we literally had nothing. The only time that kids had programming for themselves in Australia was from 3:30 in the afternoon till about 6 o'clock when the news kicked in, and then you're done for the night. and Saturday mornings. And that was it for kids, right? So I watched everything that my parents watched, I was older when Survivor started, but yeah, I could see little kids back then enjoying it because you had to sit down as a family. I try to get my kids to watch stuff now, and it is impossible. Survivor, no chance. When a new season of Survivor started, I asked my daughter, I was like, hey, watch this out. There's games, they're on the island, it's really cool stuff. Like, even something like The Traders, I tried to explain it to her. The Traders is Among Us. You love Among Us.
Mm,
It's Among Us, but in like real life. And because they have 24/7 programming
yeah,
directly like into their veins, they can go at any point in any time of day and watch a cartoon or a YouTube video or something that's just going to have the bright flashing lights that just gets directly into their brain and hooks them. And I can't
yeah.
get them to watch anything like this. Like, if Jeff's saying I'm trying to make it so that kids will watch it, you've got no chance, man. Like, zero chance. Kids now with their devices do not need to watch Survivor because they've got Roblox, whatever, like just directly into the cerebral cortex, just hooking them. And a show like Survivor, you cannot kidify it enough to get them to actually pay attention, I don't think.
Yeah, interesting, interesting. I mean, listen, this is a podcast I think at the end of the season, we should go back and listen to all of Jeff Probst's podcasts, and we should pick the topics that we want to talk about, and we do an hour, hour and a half just talking about all of the different aspects of it, because I understand why he wants to get kids into it, because those are future
Yeah.
customers, future watchers that will last with the show for a very long time. But I don't know if he's doing it the right way. I do want to read a couple of the comments here, though, because there's some interesting ones that have come in. Christian says, if the writers' strike protest for 39 days to come back, just say, listen, Christian, mate, you're only gonna get support from this podcast. We all want 39 days back. Lexa saying, as an LGBTQ child, seeing Richard won was so inspiring. He wasn't the bad guy to us. And yeah, listen, as a kid and not being LGBTQ, I didn't even know or even think about the fact that Richard was gay. Like, to be honest with you, I know they made a big deal of it, but as a kid, I was like, didn't even register to me, and I didn't even understand how cool the whole relationship between him and Rudy was, and how difficult it must have been for Rudy to open up his mind, because like he grew up in a different generation, which is why that alliance is again one of the wholesome alliances, knowing how much Richard and Rudy stayed in contact after the game, the tribute Richard did on his channel on YouTube to Rudy when Rudy passed away. Like, there was a very solid friendship built on that. And I'm glad that you had a role model that you could look up to that won the game at such a young age. For me, it was just because of the fact that he was lying and cheating and stealing and scheming. And I was like, this is not fair. This is not how the game is supposed to be played. But I'm so glad that he did it, because we've got Richard to thank that our show didn't turn into some of the European Survivor shows where it is all about who's the best at camp and contributing the most and that kind of stuff, because their game evolved completely differently to the US franchise, which is now also translated into the Australian and South African franchise, which follows the template that Richard said. He truly is that's when we do our Mount Rushmores. He doesn't even feature on my Mount Rushmore, but sometimes I feel guilty because he's kind of like the George Washington of Survivor. He started it all, right, Kuna?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there was no template. There was nothing to go off. There was no pre-seasons to look at, nothing. And he came up with alliances, which, like, even using the term alliance became such a thing. And it's all
Yeah.
because of one man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he set the way the game was played for the next 40 something seasons until Jeff decided to make it a different game.
Gabe, you're so right. Or if Sam Webb won the first season, or Lee, if they won, that would be all about mateship and friendship and contributing at camp. Luckily, that never happened. Gabe also says, it's like storytelling to me. We want to know the characters in it, not all these crazy twists. So when finished, we understand, not confused, why this person becomes the king or queen. Yep, agree with you 100%. All about mateship. Shudder. All right, let's finish this off. We've gone off topic a little bit, but this is all fun topics to talk about. Yam Yam. Start us off on Yam Yam. Where are you sitting right now on him? Do you see what I'm seeing? Do you see the path for Yam Yam to the crown here, Kuna?
Jam Jam from episode 1, I said, was definitely going to be one of the winner picks for me, just because of the edit that he got. The whole season started with him, like, and his quotes, and he's so out there and fun. And we've now seen his like, I hate using this word in reality TV, and it's so like wanky, but his journey, right? Like, he came on and we all thought he was great. Then he had that dip where he was really at the bottom and struggling and not saying the right things, and even catching himself being too forward with some of his comments, and we're like putting him down. You think, oh no, but now he's solidified his crew back. He's not in danger. He's in a position of power and actually running things with Carson a little bit more, and he's looking more and more dangerous as the show goes on, because he's not one of the people that's being targeted. And I think with his personality and his charisma and as funny and as he is, he's always going to be lovable and liked. And even this episode, we got the like how sad he was not getting the letter from home, knowing that Jeff had it in his hand and he couldn't see what his husband has to say to him, and that. So he's getting those touching moments. I think Jam Jam's in a very, very good position in the game, and in the edit, it's showing us that he's great as well. So he has to be at the top there.
I think for me, and I saw Christian Gale say Yam Yam Spy Shack level. And listen, we all have our own ideas and rankings of where we will put people on this, and it's all subjective. I mean, we had a Spy Shack level person get voted out in Franny this week, so clearly Gona and I don't know everything, right? And we could have it wrong. I just agree a little bit with Lexa here. Yam Yam has literally decided every vote. He is sole survivor. I do think that Yam Yam is still sole survivor, and I think the big conversation is going to come if he beats Carolyn or not, and we'll probably talk about that in a second. But for me, Yam Yam has had, I'm looking for storytelling. I'm looking for what Jeff believes doesn't exist, a winner's edit. And my alarm bells are just going off constantly around Yam Yam, because we've had consistent storytelling from the beginning of the season. He was one of only a few people, maybe the only person. You guys let me know. I know that there's this whole big thing that they say that all the new winners talk to Jeff on the mat in the beginning of the show. Every single one have done that. He is one of the players who did talk to Jeff on the mat right at the start. He's been shown making fire. He's been shown, he's been shown making fire at camp. So clearly he can do the fire making if he does get into that. Socially, we've been told how good he is. The fact that everybody loves Yam Yam, and that's going to be seen as a danger, because at the end of the day, this game is about social connections, and you want to vote for someone you want to see win. And then he has become the lieutenant to Carson. I do think Carson is playing. It's hard to say if he's playing a superior game, but he's playing the game that is driving the Tika Alliance in a direction. He's the driver, where Yam Yam is the co-pilot. He's sitting right next to him in the decision-making. Carson clearly trusts Yam Yam more than Carolyn at this stage, because he's letting him in on the plan a little bit more. And I do think Carson is a bigger target than Yam Yam. Yam Yam hasn't won anything. Carson is dangerous in puzzles and things like that. So I do think Yam Yam is wedged right in between the Tika 3 right now. And he's kind of, his target has got away. The weird thing with Survivor is when you've been targeted for a few rounds, if people forget about you, then sometimes you just don't become an option anymore. And people are like, okay, we tried that before. Let's try someone else. So I feel good about Yam Yam. And I don't know why. I've just got winner vibes from him. And obviously, I'm biased because he's the last person left in my draft as well. So that does go into my decision-making, Kahuna. But I'm happy to keep him in Soul Survivor.
Me too. I've got massive winner vibes from him as well. Only because I think him and Carolyn have, to me, like everything we said about Carson, Carolyn and Jam Jam, they could all very easily win. But what you're saying with Carson maybe burning too many bridges, coming off a little bit more dangerous than Jam Jam, and Carolyn is the opposite, where we've seen everything that she's doing and we love it, but out on the island, it doesn't seem she has that respect. And the fact that she was kept out of a vote for someone that she loved and wanted to keep them there means that they don't really respect what she wants in the game either. She's been along for it and being aware of stuff and showing some really good insight, but they're not involving her in the strategy talk. They're not involving her in the planning, just more of the informing once we've decided. Yes, she's in it, but she's not driving it. Like Carson and Jam Jam, and if given the option between the two, I think Jam Jam's got a better chance of winning for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. I thought we were gonna have to fight for this a little bit, because again, if you ask me right now, Chris, like if you take your bias out of it, the fact that Yam Yam is your last remaining standing person in your draft, who do you want to win this game? Carolyn is number one. Like, she has given us so much on the show this season, so much entertainment, so many great confessionals. But the thing that worries me about Carolyn is that slowly but surely she just doesn't get the respect when it comes to the vote. Like, even in this one here where she was like, no, I want Franny to stay in the game, her two closest allies in the game wasn't willing to vote with her. She couldn't convince them to move with her. So how is she going to convince a final jury that she deserves the money if they didn't even work with her, if she can't convince her own people to move with her in the game? It's a real big worry that I have for Carolyn going towards the end game here. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. But the positive, I think that if Carolyn does not win this season, the one thing that we all can be grateful for is that I think she would be back in she'd be one of the first calls to come back for a future returnee season. Like, massive character. And we're due a returnee season, Kahuna. It's been way too long. We had season 40, which was winners, but there's so many great players from the mid 30s to 40s through to the early 40s now that there's enough great talent there that we can have a returnee season. So I feel like this season will have some people that will come back, and Carolyn would be right at the top of that. But I just don't see her winning. Let's have a look at what people are saying here. Lexa saying Yam has a very underrated skill similar to Fabio. He's able to come back to tribal even when he's left out and pretending to be left out and not flip out at the start of arguments with the tribe. Yes, he does play that down quite well, where he's like, it's going to, like, we're coming back. You guys voted for me. It's going to be awkward. It is, like, he's just got that ability where he just lightens the mood. As famous is Fabio. I think Yam Yam is doing things more on purpose. I do agree. Like, I think that what Lexa is saying, there's that element because Fabio also had, yes, Fabio was behind on the plans a lot, and Yam Yam definitely isn't. Yam Yam is in on the plans. But I think what Lexa's pointing out is that Fabio had that ability to disarm people and to just like him as a person. Because remember, even though Fabio wasn't in on the plans, Fabio was a physical threat that season. They should have gotten rid of him ages ago. And somehow he kept minimizing his target with comedy and humor and playing down his threat level. So I think that's kind of what Lexa means there. Lexa says Fabio was the master of controlling his emotions, even though they constantly left him out of the votes. Yam Yam has that same ability. That's true. Because even as this crazy player, Fabio was very centered. He never, even when Nyanka kept coming at him, like, I had so much respect for how calm he kept it and above board. He kept it and how classy he kept it throughout of that. And I think Yam Yam's got that ability as well. Like, you never see Yam Yam flip out or freak out about anything. And that's the qualities of a great Survivor player, because it's all about dealing with pressure when you're out there, Kahuna.
Yeah, we nearly saw it this week. He got close, like when he didn't get the letters, and he asked Jamie, like, "Did you even have someone specific that you wanted a letter from?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's not a good thing." And Jamie was like, "What?" Like, I was like, he was cracking. He was really getting emotional by not having it, and he caught himself and sort of cried into his arm and had that emotional moment where it came off as more like, I'm just really emotional and sad, rather than lashing out of his emotion, which it nearly got there by saying, "Do you even have someone that you would want to get a letter from?" Can be like, if he kept that going and like went that little bit further, that could be a downfall. That's like really going at someone, but he brought it back in and showed cracks, but didn't let it get there. And yeah, Jam's doing a phenomenal job. Like what Lex was saying of being able to come back to a camp after being at the end of the vote. I think he probably does it better than anyone we've ever seen. Diffusing with humor, playing it off as funny, all that sort of thing. And I wonder if what you said earlier, like once you sort of get at the bottom, they forget. And I wonder if it's because, well, clearly he was at the bottom for a while. He's not in power. He doesn't have the numbers because he's at the bottom, and they just have in their mind that he's not as much of a threat because he wasn't for so long, and not realizing the game shifted a lot quickly, the game can shift very quickly. So I'm wondering if that maybe is helping him fly a little bit under the radar, because usually, like, especially on a game like the Challenge, it happens in Survivor as well. Once you're at the bottom, then you keep staying at the bottom until you can get out, and they let him get out and almost get to the top essentially. So he's in a very good position, both strategically in the game with numbers, but also socially he's impeccable. People see
Yeah.
him in a way that, so he's in a very good position to win, I think.
Yeah, let's read a couple more comments here before we close off the power rankings. Gabe says Nicaragua was my first season, so sweet spot. I can see Fabio fun attitude in Yam Yam. I'm a big Fabio fan. I was gutted when Fabio didn't come back for winners at War, to be honest. Marcus says, if I was Yam Yam, I think I would try and take out Carson at Final 5, assuming that by the time he reestablishes his relationship with Carolyn, move forward with Carolyn and Jamie. And I think that's a good combination because even though we think Carolyn is a definite shot, she's second in our power rankings, I do think that a lot of people are underestimating Carolyn's game. And Jamie, I think, has got really no shot if she does get there. But I also wanted to read this comment here by Marcus. Marcus saying, LOL, if you ask Russell Hines, he would say that Richard's game is unimpressive and that somebody would have done the alliance strategy eventually. And I have seen that comment by Russell Hines, Marcus, which I think it's rich to assume that because there was no playing manual. And we have got examples of other franchises in Europe that evolved in a non-strategic fashion, like Survivor Turkey or Survivor France. I think maybe there's more elements of it coming in now, but those seasons evolved around your contribution around camp because no one thought about alliances that early on. So I feel like there's examples to disprove what Russell thinks. It's easy to think that after he came in season 19 and 20, and it's not taken away from Russell Hines. He had 2 great seasons, but the guy sometimes doesn't do himself any favors online. I'll just say that, like with some of the takes that he has. I did see his recent Mount Rushmore where he did have Richard Hatch in that Mount Rushmore, and he included himself, Boston Rob, and Suri, and left out Tony and Sandra, I believe, in that, if I remember correctly. Well, I was like, you can't put yourself ahead of Tony, buddy. Like, Tony is the GOAT. It's like, you just can't do that. All right, I think this is sort of towards the end here of this live. So one last look at our power rankings here. We've got Jamie all the way down in 7th place. We've got Danny 6th. Then we've got Lauren in 5th, Heidi in 4th, Carson in 3rd, Carolyn in 2nd, and then Jam Jam for the first time this season takes the top spot here as we're heading into the end game at number 1. I'm very happy with those power rankings. It'll be interesting to see if we're right about our Edge of Extinction players coming into this week. I won't be on the podcast and recap this week, though, with Jake to talk about it because Kahuna is going to be taking the lead as I am traveling to the US. He'll be running it with Jake this week. I will check in with him later on to see what time that is going to drop, and we'll make sure to put the live stream link.
Yeah, it'll be the same time, Norm, but it'll be Friday night US, which is 9 p.m. Eastern, Friday night, 11 a.m. Saturday for me in Australia. So we still get that US crowd on the evening, and Saturday can be nice and early in the morning for us Aussies.
Here it's a 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you're in the US. Over on the Nullified Take channel, we're going to have Kahuna and Jake break down episode 11. I will be back with Kahuna on the weekend. I believe it's going to be Saturday evening where we normally do our lives, which is around 9 p.m. I'll be back. Just keep an eye out for that to talk about the latest challenge episode with him. And then we'll be back next week to talk about the power rankings. We'll catch up for that again. So unsure what date and time that will be, but just keep an eye on the channel. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. It is the best way to show support to this channel. We were so fortunate this season to have some great Survivor players on the channel already. We've had Omar, Nasir, Mike Gabler. I hope I'm not missing someone out from that list, but we've had some great players come on. We've had some great guests come on, and our easiest way and best way to reach out to these guests is if we've got a following on the channel. So by you subscribing, you give us credibility. It's absolutely free to do so. Please hit a like on this one, put the notification bell on so you can be notified the next time we go live. But for now, thank you so much, everybody in the live. You've been great. You've been so awesome participating in the conversation. I'll catch you guys next time. Grab your torches, head back to camp. Goodbye.